Good morning and welcome to the March 7th, 2025 SANDAG Audit Committee meeting. Before we get started, I would like to ask the interpreter to introduce themselves and walk us through the process of interpretation services for today. Interpreter, go ahead.
Good morning. This is the voice of the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting scrolls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press on the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to hear the original Spanish in the background. Headsets are available in the for the interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días, aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer el uso de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos. Luego, interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés, en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares para el servicio de interpretación si se encuentra en la sala de reunión. Favor de pedir los auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most of any in the country in the United States. From our four cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Gueño, the Luiseno, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from indigenous traditional knowledge and experience in undoing the injustices of the past. Now please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we jump into the meeting, we'd just like to confirm with our clerk, Francesca, that we have a quorum.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum this morning.
Fantastic. We're going to move on to non-agenda public comment and member comment, and due to the full nature of our agenda today, we'll allow 2 minutes for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Thank you. We do. First will be Cesar Javier, followed by Purita Javier.
Okay. And just a note for those of you who wish to speak who are online, please raise your hand or press 9 if you're on the phone. Thank you.
Good morning. We need help to abate a home-based business, home occupation, and ceramics manufacturing and kiln operation located at 5238 Streamview Drive, District 9, City of San Diego since 1984. The home-based kiln operation has been a potential harm to human and environment as vulnerable residents in very close proximity to the kiln operation, our medical symptoms, namely myself, Rita Barber, now Javier since 1997, and Cesar Javier since 2012. Are sneezing, coughing, eye irritation, sore throat, difficulty breathing, dizziness, unusual headaches, heart palpitation, anxiety, fear, and depression. We were hospitalized related to the toxic fumes from the kiln operation. The poisonous gases and airborne toxic particulates inhaled and or possibly ingested from kiln operation may lead to respiratory problems such as asthma, pneumonia, and lung cancer. On June 13, 2021, when the homeowner of kiln operation converted the furnace,
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Cesar Javier, and Cesar will be followed by the person on Zoom with the phone number ending in 731.
Cesar Javier. I do not know really how to amplify this to our God, but as a human, we are in search, and finally we reach the level of thinkers like SANDAG. Thank you, SANDAG. I wish to convey this to our city law authorities, lawful authorities. I think no one is represented here. I beg that they should be here because this is what we call a boat of thinkers, like the Thomasites that educated the Philippines during its Commonwealth period. This is not an urn for our cremation. I wish that this is only for aesthetics, you know. And to tell you frankly, by coincidence, we were able to attend this environmental and health meeting last night, followed by the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. And they gave us a hope because they told me that should be the what you call effort of the Air Pollution Control District. And I said, yes, ma'am. And they are failing. They failed. Look at the Tijuana River pollution. Look at the hot spot in the city of San Diego. And our council members, including the mayor, who is the assigned leadership, are not doing their job. Honorable sheriff authorities, and they were scratching their head. How come? Okay, we will send this note to the APCD, another solution. Now we come here this morning again and again because there is hope in you guys because I think you're honest and wise, or else you're not here. Uncle Sam mandated a civilian CEO, not a politician, and that is
Thank
our...
you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be the person with the phone number ending in 731. You can go ahead when you're ready. You are self-muted at the moment.
There we go. Took a second. Hey there, newbies. It's Truth calling in to hold Luz accountable. She hasn't done anything wrong yet, but I am watching. But David Dito, I thought I told him he doesn't have a choice on his chairing of meetings. He doesn't listen. Luckily, Jack, you're an all right replacement stand-in. I don't mind you having to hear me twice a week. I also think you have some things in common with Zito, although you definitely own more than one shirt. Congrats. I would like to thank Francesca for the sandwiches and pastries. I believe she's provided about half a sandwich's worth of tax dollars. There's really no equity in how tax dollars get spent after all, just like there's no equity in how the sandwiches and pastries get distributed. I still have my giant box of Panera pastries from the joint meeting in the fridge and have tried hard not to buy any more pastries until those are all eaten. Thank you, SANDAG, for finally trying to help me save some money. Now, for Courtney, I'd like to see an update on sooner than the 18-month-long wait for the ethical climate survey, preferably in 12 months or less. I'd also like to see a presentation about ethics, much like the City of Coronado's city attorney recently gave. It could benefit SANDAG and everyone who doesn't trust it. I also request a presentation on a SANDAG attendance policy. Does one even exist? What about a quarterly attendance report? Accountability is part of Audit's job. I'm also very concerned about these projects eventually requiring a future audit. The airport transit connection, which was corrupted since its inception under Hassan, The Lausanne rail realignment, which just wasted money studying options that involve dangerous tunneling and eminent domain. When regional planning Jennifer Williamson said you want to pare down options to 2 or 3 in order to save money on the EIR. And finally, the Future Purple Line project, which started with a potential route that was predetermined without public input to see what destinations amongst the entire county people might be interested in having access to. These types of charades are why people cannot trust SANDAG and why there's always resistance to its bloated projects based in deception. We need solutions. That's why Jack and Moose are here, I hope. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Are there any member comments at this time? Member Zito?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First, just making a reference to the last public speaker, I know the independent performance auditor, you've scheduled talks with staff about ethics. I'm curious, are you planning on doing any with the board?
Not currently, but we certainly can, and I was going to include in my update just some information on the last ethics talk that we did.
Okay, great. That'll be good to hear, but we may also then, I mean, it might not be a bad idea to do something with the board at some point, particularly like the offsite, when we have the offsite or something like that, but it's something to consider. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I already did send a note to the chair on this, but in the February executive committee meeting, there was a proposal that came forward to add advisory members to all the policy advisory committees for the unincorporated area, which in general I think is I think is a great idea. But at the very last minute, Vice Chair LaCava did make the note, did note that the audit committee is somewhat different and recommended that we don't do it for the audit committee. And I would thank him in this forum for actually acknowledging that we don't have representation from all the subregions. And I would turn that into a request that from the perspective, and wanted to get on the record that if there are any proposed changes to the makeup or operation of the audit committee, I do think that it should be brought to the audit committee first for discussion so we can provide some input before it goes to the executive committee or the board itself. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Your knowledge and wisdom is appreciated. And thanks for the heads up on all items. Any other comments? No? I just want to say I'm grateful to be here as the chair of this committee. I'm looking forward to working with the members of the public and the office of the auditor and all the staff in there. So always a learning curve. We're going to go on to item number 2, an update from the Office of the Independent Auditor, Auditor Ruby.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome. Well, we've got a lot going on, so here we go. Recruitment is going well. We had a senior auditor accept our offer last week, so we're very happy that we'll be welcoming a new auditor on April 1st. And we are also initiating 2 recruitments to fill vacancies, and that was just went through the NeoGov process by the Director of HR last night. We have audits that we'll be finalizing and presenting to the Audit Committee for H&B and Sole Source in May. The audit recommendation follow-up process, we had out to the administration follow-up on recommendations that were due in December, and we have received those, and our team is working on validating those. So those will be the next ones that will be brought in before this committee. And that'll be sometime in the June timeframe, I believe. And the dashboard is going swimmingly. So we'll also bring that back once we have the next version of it for you all to look at. We did award a contract for the independent financial assessment, which I had informed you last time. And the notice to proceed was signed and finalized and sent out to the contractor yesterday. So we'll be initiating a kickoff meeting soon on that. And we are beginning to evaluate third-party whistleblower hotline software right now. So we have our bids in and we'll be reviewing that. We did do an ethics. I did an ethics presentation. I was invited to speak in front of the project management community of practice group. We had 25 attendees. It was very well received and just a great opportunity. And I want to say the difference that everybody is required to go through ethics training. It's AB 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. This is different. This is really a conversation about ethics, and it's so critical that we have these conversations because it provides a forum to talk about ethics. Sometimes is a squishy. People don't really know what does that mean. And I think when engaging in this, and particularly with the independent performance auditor, it gives the staff an opportunity to get to know us, to get to know what ethics are in the workplace. We talked about specific examples around project management. So now we're bringing it home to them. And then they were engaged in questions of, well, how does this impact us? I talked about having an ethical buddy. Because a lot of times in ethics, and I'm sure many of us up here at the dais would confirm this, it's like sometimes you need to talk things through to really understand, is there an ethical framework there that is being violated? And then it was great in response to it. The group wrote back some things that they'd like to see going forward. One was, be great to have an ethical conversation like that in onboarding. So we'll be talking to management about how to incorporate some of that. We had several department directors reach out and say, hey, I'd like that to our group as well. So really excited about the dialogue that is coming from that. In response to the ethical buddy comment, I want to share this with you because I think it's powerful. They responded, finding an ethical buddy is important, but finding someone brave enough to speak up can be difficult. So I think super powerful on what we can do as the leadership of the organization to provide an environment to encourage others to feel safely to speak up. So that's what we've been up to, and I will conclude with that.
Thanks, Auditor Ruby. I'm sorry, were there any public comments, Francesca?
Thank you. First, actually, our only public comment will be Truth. You can go ahead.
What was that? Sorry, Francesca.
One public comment.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, that's me. Hey, Jack. So there's a new auditor on April 1st. It kind of sounds like a joke. Interesting. And independent financial assessment. I don't really remember hearing that last time, so that's interesting. Maybe I forgot to watch the rest of the meeting back. I don't know. But Courtney said something about people don't really know what ethics means. So that's interesting. How do they not know that? How do they not know right from wrong? But I understand there's gray area sometimes, right? And then that's where that having an ethical buddy comes into play, apparently. But it's kind of funny because I don't know, like workplace is different, obviously, because you can't necessarily choose who you're with. But in real life, you should be choosing friends, good people as friends, because they will hold you accountable. That's what I try to do. So maybe in the workplace, people should be thinking, maybe I should talk more with the people that know right from wrong so they can make sure I do the right thing. And someone brave enough to speak up, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to keep speaking up for you guys until you become brave. I think that's one of the solutions. I would love more people to become brave because guess what? You can't have a land of the free without a home of the brave. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
And that concludes the public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Any member comments? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Courtney, for this report. I have a couple of questions. First, to cover that topic at the very end regarding ethics. I understand you are performing this type of, group setting discussion with internal staff. This isn't something that we can request you to do somewhere else, such as City of National City. Just kidding. Okay, understood. Thank you. Yes, I think ethics is a very, very important thing for public service. And, something that the public speaker just mentioned, it feels innate maybe to know right from wrong, but the nuance and then, the letter of the law and this and that, that does get tricky. So hopefully there is a lot more action toward understanding ethics and upholding ethics, and that being the guiding principle. And I think the work that this office does, OIPA here in SANDAG, is part of the reason why we are moving in that direction and we are succeeding. So thank you, Ms. Courtney, and your staff. My question had to do with the independent financial assessment that you mentioned. Can you briefly give me a clue as to what that is?
Thank you, Vice Chair, for that opportunity to clarify. As part of SR 125's investigation, due to the financial issues we found and the inability to be able to rely on some of the financial reporting, one of the recommendations was to have an independent financial assessment. So this will look at overall the finance and accounting department, and the CFO is well aware and on board with this as part of the process in putting together the RFP. I did invite both the CFO and the Director of Accounting to look at the scope of work as well. So I think overall the organization sees this as a benefit, but I want to see if Don wants to add anything.
Yeah, I would just add that, yes, we have discussed the scope overall, and certainly the agency is open to anything that will help us continuously improve.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. And the update that you were providing, Ms. Courtney, is the scope of work has been defined, the RFP has been written, and what's the next step?
We have awarded it.
You've awarded it. Okay,
Yes,
great.
so next
got it.
step is project kickoff meeting.
Thank you very much.
And then we anticipate from project kickoff to coming before the audit committee and the board approximately 4 months.
Any other additional comments? Shanae?
Courtney, just a quick question for you in regards to the ethics conversations. Just for clarification, are the ethics conversations inclusive of like conversations regarding fraud, waste, and abuse, and kind of what that is specifically and how to report it? Or are we just talking ethics in terms of the environment and what's expected in terms of employee behavior?
So for the project management group in particular, we looked at common themes in project management. So that would be ethical concerns and incorporated as well. Like when you see these things that they could be potentially fraud or waste, or, you know, that you should be concerned, and that to come to OIPA, you know, you can go to your director with these conversations as well, but ultimately you can also end up in the whistleblower hotline. But even before that, you know, Member Pickney Forrest, is that you can have a conversation with me so that we are there to support that. You're unsure if something's wrong, it looks off, you know, just making sure that they understand. Sometimes it is tricky. Sometimes you don't know it's blatant fraud, waste, or abuse. So it definitely curtails into the hotline program.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other additional comments? No. I just want to say I appreciate hearing this conversation regarding ethics, especially at this agency, and I agree with Vice Chair Molina that it needs to happen in all other jurisdictions because it's self-regulated, but I think people have to be aware of it. And you know, my hope is that as we discuss this, as the agency adopts an ethics some training and whatever might be down the road, that it's not just for show, not for anything, that it really is part of the culture, and that each of us hold ourselves accountable, because I really think that for people to have trust not only in our own jurisdictions, this agency, but in government in general is really important. I think that ethics isn't so much if it's legal or not legal, because there's a lot of things that are legal that are not ethical. And I think it really comes down to us really making sure that we're leading out individually in the best of ways that we can. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to turn some time over to Dawn. I think she's filling in for Mario. She has something she'd like to share with us.
Yes. So good morning. I'm Dawn Batiste. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I'm filling in for Mario today. And earlier this week, he was in Sacramento meeting with the governor's office and meeting with CalCog for a board meeting. CalCog is the California Council of Governments. It's an association that we participate in with other transportation planning agencies throughout the state. Today, he's in Mexico. He was invited by the government to discuss Otay Mesa East, and is also hoping to discuss the environmental mitigation concerns along the border. Finally, U.S. Senator Adam Schiff came to visit San Diego last weekend. He toured the Low Sand Corridor in Del Mar Bluffs, and they had a great conversation about the importance of the rail connection between San Diego and the rest of the nation, as well as future funding for the corridor. Since last we met, staff have been working with the independent auditor to respond to the SR 125 investigation, and we've also submitted more than 25 completion updates for review and certification. The updates reflect implementation of the recommendations relating to contracts and procurement. The team also met with Caltrans briefly, and I've just informed the independent auditor this morning on an upcoming audit of SANDAG projects. Caltrans is a conduit of much of the state and federal funding this agency receives. And so they do regularly perform audits themselves of our activities. This is going to be a comprehensive audit from planning programs to transit programs to our roadway funds we receive through Caltrans. We're going to share more with you, with the independent auditor and the board once we learn the full scope of the audit. We have not had the entrance conference yet, simply initial conversations to determine the points of contact. On our office move, we're expecting to receive our certificate of occupancy today for the West Building. And so if we receive it, employees will move in phases between mid-March and early April. All public meetings will continue to be held here at 401B through March 28th. And then a quick update on the regional plan. Staff recently presented the latest update on the 2025 plan at Joint Working Group and Joint Policy Advisory Committee meetings. The good news is that the modeling is showing that we meet state and federal requirements, and our technical methodology has been accepted by CARB, the California Air Resources Board. And so the technical methodology explains how SANDAG will measure greenhouse gas emissions in the 2025 plan. The updated estimated cost of the draft plan is 125 to 133 billion for all of the programs and projects proposed by 2050. And we do anticipate releasing the draft plan in May for public comment. So thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you for the update. A lot of great stuff going on. It's always good to hear. Yeah, Mr. Molina.
Thank you very much, Chair. Fisher, one more question for Dawn. Wow, what a time to be in Mexico this week, right? And I've thought about this a lot regarding the situation with the tariffs and the fact that we are pushing, the success of Otay Mesa East, which will be, one of the ways that we can further facilitate trade between the U.S. or at least commerce, the movement of products between Mexico and the U.S. So I'm just curious, is that in the conversation? I know you're not Mr. Orso, but I'm curious, is that part of the conversation related to Otay Mesa East? And is SANDAG of an opinion regarding that?
I think at this point, it's too soon to tell how things will ultimately unfold and what the impact will be. And unfortunately, I'm not privy to the actual agenda. I know those discussions are happening at a national and international level. Certainly, there is quite a lot of demand, and a big portion was not just the goods movement, but the air quality at the border. So there are multiple factors that we really need to consider with that particular project, but I do think it's a little too soon to truly tell how that will unfold.
Any other member comments? No. We're going to move on to item 3, approval of the minutes. Any public comments, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any hands from the public. No public comments.
Any member comments? Carmelina?
Sorry, I'm full of questions. I was not present for the meeting that we have the minutes for. Should I abstain from approving the minutes? I don't know the process.
Chair, perhaps I could respond to that. The Robert's Rules of Order does not require you to abstain from participating in a vote on the minutes if you did not attend the meeting. We simply ask that you have had an opportunity to review them and believe them to be accurate.
Appreciate the clarification.
Chair,
Oh.
I'd like to make a
Yes,
comment.
go
I'm
ahead.
just curious. When I was reviewing the minutes, a lot of the minute synopsis says we will present. And I'm just curious if since they're minutes, that it should be present it as if it's occurred. So for example, the OIPA will present an update. It should be OIPA presented an update. If they could be reflected as it actually occurred. Thank you.
We can revise that and repost them.
Right, appreciate the input. Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes.
I'll go ahead and second that. Let's go ahead and vote.
And that motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 4, an update from the status of the ERP implementation. And my notes say that Kelly McHale and Kimberly Trammell will present.
Good morning, Audit Committee members. I am Kelly McKyle, Director of Contracts and Procurement Services, and I am presenting along with Kimberly Trammell, the Director of Accounting and Finance. The prior chair, Chair Zito, had asked management to return to the Audit Committee and provide an update on where we are with our Enterprise Resource Planning or ERP implementation project that we started back in 2022. The ERP is a software system that helps automate and streamline business functions such as accounting management, human resource management, and procurement. Kim and I are happy to provide that update, and we have several of the other key directors here that are integral to the project in case you have questions later after the presentation. To provide some context and history, I would like to start this conversation with a slide that was presented to the Audit Committee back in May of 2023. The conceptual framework on the slide is a process optimization triangle that aims to achieve the best possible outcome by balancing improvements in each of the elements represented: people, process, and technology. The technology platform we selected through a formal competitive request for proposals platform was the Tyler Enterprise ERP. Tyler Technologies is a leader in providing software solutions to public sector agencies across the United States. We told this committee back in May of 2023 that the system was slated to replace numerous software systems that we were currently using. We also intended to address numerous audit findings with the implementation of the system. Since that time, we have been on a journey of discovery and optimization. As with any journey, it has not been without its bumps and detours. But as you all know, the optimization process is not a one-time fix, but rather a framework to continuously monitor and identify opportunities for improvement in all 3 areas, something SANDAG management has been committed to throughout this project. We want to be clear that we have gained numerous efficiencies, particularly in the areas of internal controls when it comes to the encumbrance functions that are system-driven, and in the areas of invoice management and data governance. In June of 2024, Mario Orso joined us as our new CEO, and in addition to taking a fresh look at the ERP technology and the resources dedicated to the project, we've been laser-focused on an updated organizational framework, oversight and transparency of the open corrective action plans, and an enhanced internal framework with administrative controls, efficiency, and project management. I will now turn it over to Kim to dive a little deeper on what we've accomplished to date, where we've pivoted from our original project plan, and what's next on our ERP technology timeline.
An enterprise resource planning system brings various core business processes together, integrating budgeting, accounting, financial reporting, procurement, human resources, payroll, asset management, grants management, project management, and more. Prior to the start of the implementation of ERP, these functions happened in a number of different systems. This slide is something that was presented earlier and to the audit committee, and we're providing an update on the status of the various systems that were being brought into were planned to be brought into ERP. Each circle on the slide represents one of those systems. We've updated it to show status based on ERP phases. Budget, procurement, accounting, and other financial functions cut over in the new ERP system just over a year ago in January of 24. The green circles on this slide represent systems that have been replaced by the ERP system. So those ones that have been phased out and are gone. The next major phase of the ERP implementation is human resources and payroll. These will go live in July of 25. The blue circles on the slide represent the systems that will be phased out at that time. So that's the majority of the circles and the previous systems. As we've learned more about the Tyler ERP system capabilities, we've identified 3 systems that require further evaluation to determine the best approach for providing those functionalities. These are the magenta circles on the slide. Transnet PM Tools is used for budgeting and tracking of capital projects and currently has additional functionality that is not available in ERP. IMBM is a labor budgeting system that enables SANDAG to allocate labor costs across over 400 projects and grants to effectively utilize our various funding sources. These systems may still be replaced, but a thorough evaluation of the business and system requirements is needed to determine the appropriate replacement option. CMS is a contract management system that was in place prior to the implementation of ERP and enabled the tracking and approval of contracts, task orders, and other agreements. A careful review of ERP post-implementation has confirmed that the CMS system is a more efficient means of managing procurement approvals and reporting. I'll turn it back over to Kelly to talk a little bit more about this change in course.
Although we fully transitioned processing our procurement and award activities to the ERP in January of 2024, we did begin to experience quite a few challenges. While this chart highlights some of the most critical items, I would like to note 2 that have been particularly problematic for the agency. The ERP puts a hold on invoices while a contract or purchase order is being amended in the system, and that's just inherent technology of the ERP system that we purchased. This resulted in substantial delays at times to our vendors while we process amendments in the system. By returning to CMS, we can utilize that platform to route, approve, and store the amendment documentation, then enter the record into the ERP for the encumbrance and future payment activity. The other big hurdle has been the lack of reports available to us. The ERP reports are more financial in nature, and they do not support the kinds of reports we need to respond to audits and our federal funding agencies. And that's something that when we acquired CMS and did custom reporting, when we configured that system, we actually designed some custom reports. Like when the FTA comes, we hit a button and it spits the report out for us. And so it does streamline and create efficiencies for us. This has resulted in manual efforts and a lot of staff time to be responsive to our federal funding agencies when we come to reporting. In October 2024, Courtney Ruby validated and confirmed 3 key points during her CAP update to the Audit Committee, that we had indeed implemented 11 recommendations with our transition to the ERP system, that we had notified them of our intent to return to the CMS as our system of record for procurement and contract approval lifecycle activities, and maintain the ERP as our financial system of record for budgeting and accounting activities. During OIPA's testing of the ERP, they had confirmed the inefficiencies noted by management. We are currently underway with relaunching an optimized version of CMS by the beginning of FY26 or late June, and OIPA will be retesting those 11 recommendations when we do. With that, I will turn it back to Kim.
Laid out on this slide, using the same color scheme as the earlier slide, are the phases of the ERP system implementation. Converting from multiple systems to a single software solution is a major undertaking that takes a significant amount of time and effort to complete while continuing daily operations. The amount of time and effort, the implementation was broken into multiple phases. Phase 1, as I mentioned, went live in January of 24 and included a variety of financial and contracting functions. Phase 2 is just a few months from going live. This is a heavy lift for the human resources and payroll teams to ensure that employee paychecks will be accurate and timely. In addition to paychecks, this phase includes position control, employee demographics, benefits, time and attendance, accruals, training administration, and payroll reporting. Phase 3 is a bit of a catch-all of a number of smaller functions that complement the current business processes. The capital asset portion of this phase actually went live last fall. And then we started receiving training in late February on the remaining phases, which includes purchase card reconciliation, where users can go into the system directly and reconcile their purchase cards, employee reimbursement, which will also have a self-service function, but is a different means of reimbursing our employees than our current AP process, and vendor access, which ultimately will allow our vendors to be able to go in and see the status of their payments and contracts. Those were the 3 planned phases of ERP, but we continue to try to find ways to utilize the ERP system to improve efficiencies. The 3rd box is added as potential functions that are being considered to be included for development in the future. This is our a financial reporting module that is in ERP, future possible integration with NeoGov, which is our employee recruitment system. The budgeting of the salary and benefits. Benefit enrollment will go live along with normal health insurance enrollment timeframes, and assessment of the integration with the back office system. So all things that we think we may be able to utilize to improve efficiencies. This timeline slide takes us from the kickoff of phase 1 in March of 22 to the go live of phase 2 in July of 25. There have been some bumps, as Kelly mentioned, and delays during the implementation of this project. It's a complicated system implementation, and we did experience some challenges due to minimal implementation services from the provider, as well as turnover of key project staff. We, looking back, realized that some significant process changes were not fully vetted in advance, like bringing payroll in-house and all that entails, and the contracting component being added to the scope of work late in the process. We're committed to a successful implementation of phase 2 for HR and payroll. The timeline was extended so that we could get extra staffing brought in so that they can work on the regular day-to-day payroll while our payroll team focuses on learning the new system, and also so that we could do additional training for our employees so that they become accustomed to the new way of entering their timesheets, because that can cause errors if people aren't trained on how to do their timesheets. ERP phase 1 has improved our processes and internal controls in many areas, including the automated workflow approval function, centralized document management, automated budget reviews, and the integration of previously separate systems. We continue to focus on optimization of ERP through continuous training and review of our processes. Training builds the skills necessary to effectively utilize the system and make sure that the data going into the system is good. Management has a continued commitment to solid internal controls. We are looking at what else needs to change to strengthen internal controls and address audit recommendations. Activities underway include development and changes to our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, creation and rollout of a new invoice review form, the establishment of a PPM office to standardize project management practices and training. With the implementation of phase 2 ERP, SANDAG will have merged 12 of the 15 different systems into ERP. Going forward, we will continue to evaluate how the ERP system, potential integrations with the system, and other software opportunities may be utilized as part of the overall process optimization triangle. We hope this update on ERP provided some clarity of the system and its role in our overall process here at SANDAG. We are happy to answer any questions you have and have other key directors available to address their areas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the update. Really appreciate that. Are there any member or public comment?
Thank you, Chair. We do have public comment on this item. Cesar Javier will be first.
Thank you, SANDAG. I could only input my contribution by metaphor. You know, life sustenance is basically on balance macronutrients such as protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Do we have those macronutrients in SANDAG planning or implementation? Do we have micronutrients like vitamins A to Z? And that's what I think we are now focused on, those microvitamins to sustain and support the macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbohydrates. I think we have too much sugar or too much fats that makes our body system of high blood pressure, that makes a arterial subject to leakage or breakage, we call aneurysm. There is aneurysm in our planning system, invented by politicians. We are professional thinkers. We know that public service is all about ARASTI, available, responsive, adequate, timely. Let's make it simple, effective, and efficient. I am inspired to contribute because this is our SANDAG. Your SANDAG, my SANDAG, Uncle Sam's resources, Uncle Sam's food blood. Micronutrients, macronutrients together, we will have the best rule and rule of implementation. You see, it was mentioned about ethics. It was mentioned all about leadership. Come on, let's work together. This is a public-heavy combination movement.
Thank you. Your time has expired, and that concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. Any member comments? Member,
I have a question.
Question for Kelly and Kimberly. Thanks for your presentation. Sorry for the repetitiveness of my question, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the phases correctly. So for phase one, the financial legacy systems have been essentially replaced with the new financial module. Phase two, it's anticipated that that's going to be the human resources payroll system that's upcoming July 2025. And then the future last phase would essentially be the CMS system, which also includes the procurement model. Do I have that correct?
Yes, the first part, you've got phase 1 and 2, perfect.
Okay, phase three.
Phase three, you want to speak to that?
So phase 3 initially was planned to be smaller components of the ERP that can just kind of be trickled out, is how I'm going to say it. So that's the procurement card, the vendor self-service, the employee reimbursement phases, and then it included a capital asset phase that we've actually already completed. So all of those are, as I mentioned, we just received the start of training a couple weeks ago, and we'll be moving forward on those aspects. CMS wasn't really part of the original plan phase, so Kelly can give you more information about how that will be rolled out.
Okay.
Right. Sorry. Right now, we're using the ERP to workflow like contract approvals, but we're going to take that piece and put it back in our contract management system. So once the contracts are approved in our CMS, we're going to put them in to ERP for the budgeting, encumbrance, and payment functions. So the ERP will be the financial system of record for contracts and purchase orders, but the procurement part of it is going to happen, and award part will happen in the CMS, the contract management system. So we'll be using two systems. So if Courtney wanted to look where we've awarded a contract and for all of the supporting award documents, she'll go to our contract management system. If she wants to see where it's been paid and all of that, she'll go into our ERP system.
Got it.
So we'll be maintaining two systems, but they both have their efficiencies for SANDAG.
Got it.
Yes.
And then the last question, it's more of a monitoring question. Since this is the first year of implementation for the system at large, is there any planning built in to sort of periodically, maybe even, I won't put a number on it, but in my head, it would be on a quarterly basis, but to periodically check that the internal controls in the systems are speaking to each other and working as intended, as you're kind of rolling on new modules, as opposed to waiting a year and looking at a snapshot back in time and realizing something did not occur.
Well, I will say we go through our annual audit every year, and so that is something that is considered as part of that process. We also recently had the vendor Tyler come in and spend a couple days talking to us about how we're using the system, and they provided some recommendations on things we might consider doing differently. We would also, of course, as as different audits are coming up, be looking at the internal controls and how all of that is working. The finance department is also going through a review of all of our SOPs. And so that is another place where we look at, how is the system working and do we have the efficiencies that we were looking for?
Okay, thank you, because that was my final question in terms of tracing everything back to the standard operating procedures. Okay.
I would also add, as we're bringing CMS back online, we're rewriting our SOPs to make sure that the internal controls are still there as we blend CMS back into the process to make sure we still have valid and operational, because now we've got the human element of transferring data from one system to the next. So we're mapping it to make sure we're good. So, and I'm sure when Courtney's team comes back in and make sure that also that she's satisfied with that when she tests.
I too am trying to understand the system. So on the slide, you have CMS, procurement, contract, lifestyle, system of records, and there are 2 columns. So the contract management system, was that the old system? And then the ERP is the new system?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. David?
Thank you. Thanks, Kimberly and Kelly. Very much appreciate the presentation, and actually would state, having done efforts like this myself in the past, I think the news is better than I expected. So, so I was happy to see that. It looks like a lot of very good progress. The first, just again, question is, I believe we are focusing on this system as our financial reporting and a financial method of record as well. So given that, are we putting in requirements when we go out for new projects such as Otay Mesa East that those systems must report into our ERP or work with our ERP? Is that part of what we're doing now?
We're definitely looking when there's a financial component that we have something in the scope that says it must integrate or it must have a way to work with the current system, with the financial system. Not every project is going to have that kind of financial component that a back office system does, though.
Yeah, but anything I assume anything to do with either the financial aspect or contracting or procurement is all going to have to conform to this. And I would also assume that if somebody comes back and says, well, this will do it, but it's really painful because it can't do Y, we can then go back to the vendor and say, can you add a feature? Can you add a feature for us? We have a feedback mechanism for feature requests to the ERP vendor, I would assume. Or not.
I don't think I've been involved enough to that point to be able to answer it that way. I know that we will go back to the vendors and make sure that what we're getting is going to work, but sometimes that's in addition to the current scope, I will say.
Okay, thanks. So good progress. I do think it would be useful to see how this all looks at the end and probably get perhaps annual updates and just of what these systems look like, since they're so tightly integrated to our processes that we're auditing. But thanks for giving us the current update. Appreciate it.
Did you have anything? Great update. I was on the board when this kind of was getting its feet wet in the little kids pond. It looks like it's progressed a lot. Huge shout out to staff who's maintained the operation of the agency, as well as integrating in a whole new system. I know the extra time, the complexity of it, I'm sure it wasn't easy. And I think that through the integration part, everybody's seen some opportunities that may not have worked with the Tyler system. And that's what I really appreciate. There's not working to get the job done and get to the end of the goal of saying, hey, this all has to be transitioned over, but to be thoughtful to see really where the efficiencies and effectiveness of a new system benefits you. And I agree with Member Zito that, it'd be good to have that conversation with the ERP provider of saying, hey, we have these things, is this possible? And then, if there's some more budget that needs to get, better integration, absolutely should be brought back to the committee and to the board. But no, I think this is a great step. Mr. Javier in his comments talked about, the whole point of making it simple, making it effective and efficient really does hit home. And when you talk about such a large agency, you talk about government in general, those words usually don't cross the lips of those who are participating in, and the public really doesn't feel like that's the case. But, I'm a big believer, and you'll hear me during budget season always talk about, because we always talk about funding, we always talk about grants, we always talk about all this other, budget stuff that comes to us. At the end of the day, it's taxpayer money. And we should never forget that. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of it. And this, I think, really gets us where we need to be. So I appreciate the update and look forward to hearing more and to seeing more. And again, thank all the staff who have worked hard on this to make it happen. I know it's not been easy, so thank you. We're going to move on to item 5, the Office of Independent Performance Auditor and the fiscal year 2026 budget revisions.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm Courtney Ruby. I'm the IPA. And today I will be presenting the proposed revisions to OIPA's fiscal year 2026 budget. We did come in January and presented our initial assessment of the budget. So we do have some modifications here, and they're basically come down to about 3 things. One is to remove an entry-level position, and instead, based on the ethical climate survey, I'm just giving a recap right now. Okay. Based on the ethical climate survey, we are going to initiate an HR audit of promotion and hiring practices. And so we want to utilize those funds. Then we also want to use a small portion of that for our audit software. So now going into the presentation, we are, the next slide, thank you. So in summary, we have one entry-level position is about $138,000. We have 3 recruitments in place right now. One is no longer in place, as I stated. We have a senior auditor who has accepted the position, and we have 2 associate auditors who we will be recruiting for. 3 recruitments for an office our size is enough to have underneath our belt. But this does give us the opportunity to leverage money and resources to continue to do audits. So I really like instead bringing on board the contracted services, so it doesn't slow down our ability to assess SANDAG's operations at the same time as we're moving forward in building our team. And then the software license is this will increase efficiency. So audit software can be very tedious when we're manually putting everything together. And I have worked in shops that we've done it manually and we've done it with software. And we are very looking at exactly what we want software to achieve. None of us in the executive management team in the OIPA office are from a perspective of not having experience in this. So we really just want to focus on the aspects of the automated software that will benefit us, not going in and buying the entire package. All right, so those are the summaries, and I think I've covered everything. So let's just go to the software amounts to $20,000 is what we're putting forward, and that's annual cost. And then this just shows you the line items, shows us reducing salary and benefits, increasing contracted services, and increasing software licenses. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. We do. Cesar Javier, you can step up to the podium. And Cesar will be our only comment on this item.
Cesar Javier, we are learning together, sir, and definitely thank you, SANDAG. Again, metaphor. The previous presentation is the work of arts. See the combination of languages, combination of numbers, combination of, arts. It reminds us of the 10 fingers that we all possess. I do not ask you to raise your fingers, but definitely we have 10 fingers. That's your logical, mathematical, music, language, arts, spatial, kinesthesia, natural, environment aspect. And number 9 and 10 is very easy. This is the forte of the politicians, interpersonal relation, the blah, 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 the smile before the public, and all the cutting of the ribbons with big scissor, with all the entourage around, putting umbrella, etc. That is interpersonal relation we call politicking. And the last one is very important, which is the forte of audit. Whoever is that, a group or person, it's an antibiotic, which means look at myself, mirror myself, intrapersonal. This is the weakness of the politician. They do not know what is inside of them. What they only know is benefits, big pockets. Sorry, but this is an antibiotic auditing, we call it. Without this effort, the engine is, vulnerable to lack of lubricant. And that's a failure. SANDAG, thank you. We are not failing. We are just missing some microvitamins. Vitamin C, perhaps.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Are there any member comments? Rosita?
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. Appreciate it. Everything makes sense to me. I did have one question, and apologies if this seems a little bit obvious, because I know you're a very capable person, but when you contract out, usually you get less bang for your buck because you're paying for all of their overhead as well. So with that in mind, do you believe that this is appropriately scoped with enough dollars to get a good, thorough analysis done for the part that you're contracting, right? So we're going to do that one financial audit, you're going to contract it now, or the HR audit, I guess, is the one that's newly contracted. Do you think that for the money that you're allocating, we can do a really good job? I just want to confirm that.
Thank you, Member Zito. I would say, right now, based on, we have not initiated the contracting process, so that is going to begin with an ICE. So we're going to do an independent cost and estimate. When we look at the independent financial assessment, that was done. We knew what we were going to come in on. Based on that, when I look at this, I feel comfortable that for the money that we've allocated, we're going to get a very professional, thorough audit, and my years of experience of contracting, because I've always used, when it makes sense, leveraging those contracted dollars with staff.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Fisher. Thank you, Ms. Courtney. So my question is, this contracting out of this service is for the purpose of the HR audit, right? The hiring processes. Had OIPA been fully staffed, the office of the independent auditor been fully staffed, would there be a necessity to contract out?
It would depend. And I think, again, it goes to, if we look back at our February staff analysis, February 2024, we are lightly staffed for as large as this agency is. And I do, as the Chief Audit Executive, appreciate that leverage, because our job is to get you the information to assess operations in a timely manner. So I think this provides us a benefit. If we were fully staffed right now, we still wouldn't be at the level that we need to be.
Understood. So when you say that we are lightly staffed, does that mean the office is lightly staffed because of the three recruitments? One is already completed, but is that why it's lightly staffed? Or even if you were fully staffed, you would still consider yourself lightly staffed?
Correct. And based on the analysis we put forth in the budgeting process to add 2 positions every year for 3 budget cycles to get us up to the right amount. So we're still understaffed for an office our size, given the size of the budget, in particular, the level of contracted services that are done here.
Okay. Can you tell me how many folks are in your office?
We currently have 7 individuals in our office,
Okay.
counting the senior. Counting
The
myself.
one that's coming in?
Yes, counting the one. Oh, yeah, counting the one that's, yes.
And I do hope you're counting yourself in
Yes.
this. Okay, thank you. That actually touches upon my second question, which is the need for the recruitments, right? There was 3 in the report, but there's 2 that are truly left to recruit for. My question had to do is the reason why these openings are open. Is it because folks left the office, or is it because it's additional staff to what you had previously?
The 2 recruitments that we're opening right now are due to vacancies at the end of last year.
Vacancies. Okay. Okay. And I had one other thought, but it skipped my head. I'll come back. Thank you.
Other comments? No, I appreciate this. It's always good to hear some of the new information's going on. So through the next few budget cycles, what's the total number of staff that the WIPA is going to have?
I believe we would conclude with 14 positions. However, we have just reduced a position with this revision, right? So I think that we would end up at about 13 staff members.
And when you get to that, most likely some of the contracted service that we currently have will be diminished, maybe not go away completely, but be diminished.
Again, I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation, right? Some of it will be urgency too. Something may come up that it's urgent, and we'll have to look at where staff's allocated, and we'll have a conversation here to say, should we initiate a contracted service, right? So it should diminish. However, I just want to qualify it in relation to it still would be a viable option at times that I would want the audit committee to be in conversation with me about.
Okay, that's fair. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I remembered my question, and it actually is exactly what you're asking, Mr. Fisher. So the budget, originally you had proposed 26K for contracting. Now we are changing that to 144K. So yeah, to touch upon Mr. Fisher's inquiry, in the past you had anticipated only needing 26K. But again, I hear you say it really depends. You have no idea what future audits are going to come and that would benefit from contracted services. So I'm just curious about how you arrived at the 26K original number. I understand how we are at 144K now, but the 26, is that just based on what you spent the previous year?
So the 26 is in relation to software for that we're bringing on for the hotline. So those services are not related to contracting services. But I also want to step back for a second and say the purpose of the annual audit plan that I bring forth to you all says this is what we're going to do in the next year. So, and I'm going to speak to the revisions on that as well. So we saw this as an opportunity in 2 ways. First of all, we just had issued the ethical climate survey that said this was a need. We need to go in and look at this now. When you see the revisions to the annual audit plan, it also says we don't have enough staff to do this right now. Yeah. Right? So prior to this moment, Vice Chair, we were not anticipating a contract audit, but I think it makes sense. Yes.
Okay. Always feel free to speak up. I think it's important to get all the questions out there. Yeah, I don't have any other comments or questions, and so we'll go on to, oh, actually, we need to vote on this. Is there a motion and a second to approve the revisions and forward them to the Board of Directors for inclusion in the fiscal year 2026 SANDAG budget?
I move to accept. the proposed budget amendments.
And I second.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's go ahead and, do we need to vote on this? Yeah, we vote on it.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, we're going to move on to item number 6. This update on the status of the whistleblower hotline program, and I imagine Auditor Ruby will do that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So last year we had a conversation about the whistleblower program and the reporting out, and we do an annual investigations report. We also discussed at this committee the desire to have an operations report out mid-year. So that's what we're doing today. And this is also going to dovetail into the update on the annual report at the end. But I want to say, when we look at the whistleblower program, we came out in hitting the ground running when I became IPA in relation to initiating investigations. Now, the SR 125 was initiated based on a board and audit committee request and myself to do that. So it wasn't exactly in the whistleblower program. It was outside the whistleblower program. But in the process of that, we were talking about what would the whistleblower program look. And I really think in a lot of ways, from running a whistleblower program for 5,000 employees in the city of Oakland, it looks dramatically different than coming here. So part of it is really just dropping into SANDAG's environment, culture, how we roll this out, and really warm the employees up to understanding what it is and the benefits of it. So when I talk about an operational review, I would say that we're doing that right now. We're looking at the program profile, we're looking at trends, and so that is really the operations of it. We're revising policies and procedures and updating them to make sure that we're putting together a program that fits SANDAG. To give you a snapshot in time, since we crossed over into this fiscal year, we've had 9 investigations. We've closed 6 investigations. We've had 1 investigation which we issued in relation to the SR 125 implementation. We had another investigation that we issued as well in relation to the follow-up to the SR 125. Again, that would be outside the program because that was requested by the board audit committee. And then we've had 2 investigations that right now are in the final stages of being closed. So that gives you a snapshot of what we're looking at for the 6-month period is 9 investigations over this time period. And that concludes my update, and I'll take any questions.
Thanks again. Are there any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have 1 public comment. Cesar Javier, you can step to the podium, and Cesar will be our only public comment on this item.
Cesar Javier, this is not only whistle blowing, but shouting, learning, teaching. My helper here told me, speak on the whistle hotline blowing item. When we try to do some surgery in a cancerous cells, you cut a point or slice something, it impacts the contiguous surrounding. The same thing as what I have to metaphorically say this time. Again, to help myself, help my SANDAG. SANDAG was founded, created 1966. It's still young at peak. We know that. Now, it's not only lacking in vitamin C perhaps, but vitamin D, which is sunlight, calcium. We need that. Plus, we need to inhale the clean air, drink the clean water, and eat the clean food and exercise. That's what we are doing with my wife, to whistle to you, to sound to you that we aspire to be healthy. And that is, I think, one of the elements why SANDAG is created. 3 years after that, we landed in the moon. And soon, perhaps, we will land in Mars. And SANDAG is needed there to put up again circulation and mobility. That is the challenge now that we would like to sound out to our good SANDAG members. We are not just whistle blowing. We are shouting, let's go, SANDAG. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. Are there any member comments? Go ahead.
Courtney, excuse my forgetfulness if we've already done this before, but for the 6 investigations that were closed, were those internal investigations or were those investigations that were referred to other departments for follow-up or initial review?
Those are all internal and they could be closed in preliminary form. So that's probably when I say investigations, it is 9 complaints, let me say, and then they would be closed. So some of them could be closed just because they're the wrong, it's not a jurisdiction.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Just a little bit of history, if you can educate me. This whistleblower hotline, did this exist with, prior to your coming on board, Courtney?
It absolutely did exist prior to, yes.
And when you say that you're looking at the program profile, the trends, and how to update it to fit the needs of today, it's you're modifying what existed today and improving upon it to make it fit today.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks again for the presentation and the update on our whistleblowing program, which is so needed. And I think that, you know, we've talked about all these other things, and I think the whistleblower program falls right into in line with that. You need people to be able to speak up, and sometimes it's hard to speak up when you're afraid, but we want to encourage them to speak up and be able to have that. So, all right, we're going to move on to item 7, the proposed revisions to the fiscal year 2025 WIPA annual audit plan. And our Auditor Ruby will take care of the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we did present the annual audit plan as we are required to do, and it was approved by the Audit Committee on July 11th, 2024. And what you have in front of you today is because when it becomes necessary, I present revisions to you for discussion and approval based on, you know, in particular, we'll talk about staffing levels or different things that have impacted the change in, and this also includes proposed changes to the annual performance goals and measures in the plan. And that comes from our discussion of during the IPA performance evaluation. So really areas that are impacted that we believe at this point in time, circumstances have changed in relation to the plan, as well as if the performance metrics need to be addressed. So I am proposing revisions to, let me see if I've covered everything. So I'm proposing changes to the metrics and goals, as I stated, based on the feedback from both myself and the Audit Committee, as well as looking at hotline trends and experience. I'll get into that more. We are talking about postponing some planned work reports due to changes in staffing levels, and then also adapting to streamline the audit recommendation follow-up process to allow for additional transparency, better public access, and increased efficiency. So a continuous recommendation follow-up process has also been put in place, and this came from suggestions both from yourself, the Audit Committee, as well as from management. So, you know, we, like everyone else, are committed to continuous improvement. And then a determination that departmental internal control training would yield more impactful results than a risk assessment at this time. And I'll speak more to that when we get into the slides. So the provisions for the audits and investigations in place, in progress right now, I looked at that, I assessed what we have on the work plan against the current staffing levels. And I am proposing that we postpone these following audits: the talent management, workforce planning, and succession management audit, as well as the project management, internal projects, and capital projects. Now, I will say, even with the postponement of those audits, we did just talk about that we are going to contract an HR audit in relation to staffing, hiring, and promotion practices. So while it's not the same thing, And it won't, by the time we go through the RFP process, that won't be initiated in this fiscal year. It should be initiated right at the beginning of next fiscal year. I am also proposing changing and adding the following. So changing the departmental risk assessment to a departmental internal control training series. And I want to just talk for a minute about this. So one of the board policies is Board Policy 41, and this is about internal control standards. And this board policy is based on COSA, which is the Committee on Sponsoring Organization of the Treadway Commission, and it's about internal controls as an integrated framework. Now, internal controls is a process affected by the board of directors, management, and other personnel designed to provide reasonable assurance about financial accountability. And I would say it's also greater than just financial accountability. It's accountability of processes, accountability of assets. And the San Diego SANDAG management team and staff are responsible. They're the ones who are responsible for fostering adequate internal controls to achieve accountability. So in this board policy, it lists out the internal control structure. Based on our previous audit work and continuing audit work, we feel it's important to put forth an internal control series, training series to the directors, so that there is greater education and knowledge about really the importance of internal controls, and hoping that this, in having that knowledge base and working with OIPA, that will help as we move forward, because we always have a lot of recommendations when it comes to internal control. But just like we're doing with ethics with the overall agency, we want to do internal controls with the leadership. And so that the leadership is in dialogue with us as we come in and evaluate those. If it doesn't make sense, that it will make more sense. So instead of going in and doing a risk assessment on internal controls and dinging people all over the place, let's lay the groundwork first. So this is the shift in that. The other change is also reducing investigations reports issued from 4 to 2. Now that's a knowledge we have now based on where we are. We're a couple months out from the end of the fiscal year. We don't anticipate issuing another report. We're certainly working on things, but we don't anticipate issuing one. So we're recommending this change. When we look at the actual report, you will see, and this is in your packet, on, I don't know what page it is, but there is a goal. The goals are listed out there. And it is the 5th goal that we are suggesting adding. And it is an administration goal. And this has come from dialogue with the audit committee. So we are suggesting that we include an effective tracking of audit committee requests to make sure that when you all have requests that they don't fall off the radar, that they're properly tracked, and that's a part of my evaluation. As well as, I know that when we look at a place where we have 2 vacancies that we're recruiting for, right, we have to have the right people in the right spots in order to do the work. So this is just embodying that in the plan. The whistleblower. So as I talked about the report, I am recommending that we remove this target, because right now we're trying to get our hands around what does a normal year look like in the whistleblower hotline at the same time as we're educating. So increasing it by 50% doesn't really add value if we're still determining our baseline. And then we emphasize the timely reporting of corrective action plans. We note that we did provide the cap 3 months later than usual this year. That was based on competing priorities. However, we want to emphasize that in the report, that it needs to be in your hands this year. You will have it in July. In addition, we've added this quarterly cadence, and this has been something that's important to the audit committee as well, of bringing these verbal updates. And you saw that at your last committee, you were provided a verbal update. And that concludes the updates.
Thank you. Are there any public comments for this item, Francesca?
We have no public comments on this item.
Any member comments? Yeah, go ahead.
in regards to the internal controls training, I like that idea, first off. Secondly, just a question in terms of what do you anticipate, or is there an anticipated action item for the departments in regards to that training? Like when they come out of the training, what's going to be the thing that keeps this from just being something that collects dust or information that gets forgotten? And I ask in the sense of the ERP system, and not wanting to sound like a broken record, but wanting to sound like a broken record at the same time, in terms of making sure that there's some level of periodic check as this new ERP system is being rolled out, that training perhaps is an opportunity for them to go in internally and do a self-check on their internal controls regarding the ERP system, and just kind of, have another opportunity to have a check and balance on this system, along with some of the other items that were mentioned earlier about the yearly audits, the Tyler assisting with the implementation, et cetera. So just, I guess it's a twofold question. What did you anticipate? And then just kind of sharing, it might be an opportunity for something else.
Thank you very much for the question. I do anticipate at the end of the training that they're going to be able to complete an internal control questionnaire. So had we gone forward with an internal control risk assessment, the department directors would have needed to fill out an internal control questionnaire that would have been a part of that risk assessment. So not only are we going to train them to make sure that they understand the ins and outs of internal controls, it will also be understanding that that internal control questionnaire is something that we will likely be presenting to them on an annual basis to fill out, right? I like that. I'm big about, like with the government, how you have to fill it out and sign it every year, right? That's an important tool for directors to understand. Yes, we have our internal control house is in order. So that will be the goal, is to train them on ultimately filling out that internal control questionnaire and then setting up a cadence, which will likely be annually, for them to complete those.
Thank you, Courtney. I would like to say, so we are also in the process of looking at creation and recruitment for an internal controls director, so we can be additionally, more proactive on all of these items. One of the things, I came back on board here at SANDAG in July, and we have had some conversations as an executive team. And, one of the things that I stressed is internal controls is everybody's responsibility, right? We will work with the directors, but we fully expect that, to see really down into the heart of the organization, because it is everybody's responsibility, and we need to do a better job. Clearly, the audits have shown we need to do a better job, and we are very much working toward that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair Fisher. Thank you for this update. I do agree with a lot of the reasoning that you have provided for the changes and the justification. It makes absolute sense, get everybody on the same page before you go and ask them questions about, what their thoughts are regarding risk, regarding the assessments. So I do really appreciate your idea about an internal control training series. Again, like you mentioned, with the training regarding ethics, a internal controls training series is again going to give everybody the ability to come to understand we are one team, we are all going for the same end goal, rather than having folks pull from different directions and have it all be sort of messy. And, it's good that you are trying to set the baseline, everybody understanding the same thing and the same goal and the same end goal. So I really, really like this idea about internal control training series. Okay, you said this is meant, or it's geared towards the directors and leadership. Can you give me an idea about how many directors are there at SANDAG? What are we talking about?
I don't have the exact number. Josh, how many directors do we have? Do you know offhand?
I can pull that up on my computer. Give me a second.
Well, I'm okay if it's not immediate right now.
I-
I think in my end comments, I will make a request. Perhaps, we should receive some type of org chart for SANDAG. I think it'll help us sort of get to know who the individuals are that we're speaking of.
Yeah, I have that, even just that page of the org chart that I could send you out.
Please.
I believe it's around 18.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That helps. So yes, we talked about that. Oh, my other question on the report, Courtney, goal number 5, which I am looking at, administration and the 2 points about effective tracking of requests and successful recruitment and retention of staff. This is a new goal that you're adding? It is.
Yes.
So previously you only had 4 goals.
Correct.
Not that that's, not to minimize it at all. 4 is a good number. Very good goals, but I like that this one is in addition to what was there previously. Thank you.
Member Zito?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Courtney, for this update. I guess first I'll just note that I do agree. I mean, I think even when we adopted the audit plan, I made a comment that I was not so sure about the 50% increase of the hotline just because I didn't know what it was. However, I do think, and I do not have an answer today. I do not think it's important to come to an answer today. I do think that it is important that we figure out some metric that we can use to gauge the effectiveness of that program, because you are putting a lot of energy into it, particularly with around the addition of the whole discussion around ethics. If we can come up with some metric for next year, as we look at the audit plan in a couple months for the following year, that'd be useful. And if I get any ideas, I'll let you know, but just so we can gauge it. Because, we did have some input last year about, it'd be nice if there were more ways that we could report besides just the one email address, or there was even people saying I'm uncomfortable reporting. So, if we could just gauge that, yeah, people are feeling comfortable, that it's a very useful tool, that would be helpful. But again, I don't have the solution right now. Just a little format feedback as we go forward on page 9 of the plan. There's this priority audits, reports, projects to launch in fiscal year 25. I think it would be helpful to break that into 2 sections, one for audits and reports and the other one for projects, because it can be difficult with the way they're titled right now to determine what is a report or versus just a project. I do think that adding your, I consider it a project, adding your conversations around ethics, say I'm going to do 4 of these this year, something like that would be useful to include in the project section as well. And then last, I don't know if even, this one's kind of fuzzy because there's other things we're doing like this, but the effort that we've got around independent, onboarding of independent counsel could be listed somewhere as well as an effort that we're doing that should be completed too in the current work plan year as well. But I don't know if that counts as a project, but just, should have been mentioned somewhere. But those are my comments. Thanks.
Any other member comments? No? Mr. Ruby, can you just explain a little bit of the one that's being proposed to be eliminated, the project management, internal projects, and capital projects? Explain that a little bit, if you would.
Chair, this one, it hasn't been scoped. It comes from the risk assessment. So this is a part of that we're getting ready to engage, and that's a good opportunity to just remind everybody that you will be contacted in the next week or so to set up a risk assessment interview with myself. So last year I spoke to many of the board members, audit committee members, directors, executive staff to understand where there's potential issues in the organization and then evaluating that based on risk. So we saw a potential area as the project management area, and even the CEO in response to bringing on Clint and building the project management system. We know that they're in process of also working improvements on that, but it rose to the level of this is something that we need to look at more quickly. So that's what that project management is. Now, part of the audit process is we start with that. We do preliminary planning where we go in and we dig around to really see what is the highest risk area in project management. And then we define the audit objectives. So that's why I can't say this is what it would look at. Boom, boom, boom.
It just, yeah, that's, you mentioned risk, and I was just wondering if, eliminate that, it increased any of our risk, and I know that, project management, how contracts and everything have been, procured and management and the payment through has been a conversation at the board, so I was just curious, so. I think that, I think a lot of our board members should be at this meeting and a lot more public, because it really does talk about, the agency, again, a lot of the, public hears about this agency from what they read on the news, and the only thing they show on the news are the things that, have some type of angle that's not really glamorous. But it really does show that this agency is committed. Obviously, the Office of the Independent Auditor and all those who work in it, and the board and the public members who sit on this committee are very interested in making sure we're doing the right thing, and I appreciate that a great deal. This one we just receive, is that the action on this one? We adopt it, but there's no vote that I can. I'm just reading out the script, sorry, it's my first time here.
Yes, Chair, if we could call for a motion in a second and vote on the item, please.
Okay. Then I can
Need a
call.
motion?
Need a motion?
I recommend that we adopt the action for staff's recommendation.
I second.
All right, yes, we go ahead and vote, please.
Oops. Wrong button. That's my line.
A motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, thank you. We're gonna be moving to item number 8. This is the closed session meeting, so we'd like to ask all members of the public. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. No, I'm getting this. I skipped that even though it says right there. Was there any public comment for item 7? Did we cover that?
We did cover.
Oh, we
public
did that.
comment.
Sorry, the public comment for item number 8, sorry.
We do not have any public comment on the
And
closed
then-
session item.
Through the chair, can I make a comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, see, since I'm an alternate member, I can't participate in the closed session. So I just did want to make a comment that, I don't know if this will be addressed as part of it, but it's related, which is roughly 2 years ago with a previous performance auditor. She had started an audit around IT and specifically IT asset management. And then abandoned that audit because it clearly wasn't going to go well. So I think that, asset management is clearly important from a security perspective. So I don't know how that folds into the conversation that you might be having, but I do think making sure that we can close the loop on that particular item would be very helpful.
Appreciate that. So. Everybody, a moment to head out. Okay, appreciate it. The committee met in closed session. I'd like to turn the time over to Amberlyn for a report out.
Thank you, Chair. The Audit Committee met in closed session on item number 8, and there's no reportable action at this time.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any more public comments and member comments. No. That concludes our agenda today. The next audit committee is scheduled for Friday, April 4th. However, there may be a special meeting called. There's some information that's coming forward that there might be a slight delay. So we will probably have our next committee meeting April 11th at 1 p.m., but the staff will reach out to every member of the committee and poll them. So 1 p.m. So with that, our meeting is adjourned.